Hi, Amigis.
Hello, everybody. We're back again.
We're back and we're just chit chatting on chapter three. It's going to be so good. Brenda, why don't you get started?
Okay, yeah. So,
Should we read the titles, right? México y el mito del
yes, chapter
mestizaje.
3, México y el mito del mesti. Well, you already said it, mestizaje. Mestizaje. um, Super glad that it was actually a short chapter, but I will admit, like, the first half of the chapter, I didn't understand what he was trying to kind of talk about.
I had to read it twice, that first
Yeah.
page, because when I realized he's like going into monologue about the Planet of the Apes and like
Mm-hmm.
Caesar, I was like, okay, let me go back into seeing what he's trying to say there. I agree. It was a little difficult.
Yeah, but I think overall, this chapter really goes over, I guess, more like the definition of what is it, mestizaje.
Mm-hmm.
I guess kind of also like the history of like how the word or this term came to be. But at the end of the chapter, there was some shocking news about like the revolution Mexican heroes, and I'm like, oh my gosh, no, they didn't. But
No,
uh,
I think it also kind of touches on like a really important topic when we're talking about
mhm.
colorism and mestizaje, and it's like the no, like, oh, I'm brown, but at least I'm not an indio, or like, sure,
Mhm.
I'm brown, but I'm rich, right? Like you identifying yourself as like what you're not, and that's also something that's deep rooted into our psyche of, well, at least I'm better than this, right? Or in
Mhm.
comparing yourself. He gives like a really quick connection of like, um, que rechazaron nuestros antepasados hace cientos de años? Like, what were you rejecting hundreds of
Mhm.
years ago? And I would say even 20 years ago, everybody was like, well, I'm not that brown, right? Or like, my nose
Yeah.
isn't that round. Or, just things along those lines that I'm like, huh, I guess we did kind of do that as a society, as a culture in
Mhm.
Mexico.
Yeah, and he definitely does go over that quite a bit, um, especially because of this one. Um, I guess this one philosopher, Jose Vasconcelos. He was the one who brought like the term. What is it like? Una que like somos una mezcla de todos. But even though when he was like trying to preach this idea, it's like we're a mix, but embrace your European side. Ignore
Mm-hmm.
everything else, and because of that, um, people just forgot about like the indigenous people, like their actual like roots and their ancestral history, and it was mostly focused on like, in order to better la raza, let's focus more on the European side. So that I think
Mm-hmm.
that definitely led to a lot of, I think, why we're always like, you know, I'm prieta, but I'm educated. I have a good job. I have like a good car or things like that. Just always like, but I'm also this.
Oh yeah, and I just want to read a line. It's on page 78. Like, el problema con el mestizaje es que no estamos hablando de una mezcla, sino de un proceso de asimilación cultural, que no es otra cosa que borrar el conjunto de identidades de una persona. And so, to me, assimilation is something that you
Mm-hmm.
hear all of the time. Like, you could, for example, like a name that's almost so common, right? Like Jose or Maria. And Jose wants to go by Joe, and Maria
Mm-hmm.
wants to go by Marie. Or, just
Yeah.
ways that you assimilate yourself into sort of erasing everything that's culturally relevant into who you are. Or when you go to, you know, I don't know. I mean, I guess in our case, I've seen a lot because, I'm from South Central, so I'm very proud of that. And I know growing up when I was first in college, everyone was so embarrassed about it. Like other people that were from South Central, they're just like, oh, I'm just from Los Angeles. Like, oh, yeah. Trying to sort of deflect from that identity. There's no negativity, but there's perception that other people have towards a certain area, right? Or, for example, I don't know, even something as simple as like dyeing your hair blonde or having highlights,
Mm-hmm.
or, oh, you're trying to assimilate, and that's not the case. Or people who will not listen to Spanish music. Will
Mm-hmm.
not listen to Spanish music.
Oh, yeah.
Granted, I've had people like that, like, oh no, I want to listen to country music, and you're like, oh, okay, it's great, like, all right, sounds good,
Okay. Yeah, and then exactly like what you're kind of talking about, like he does mention that a little bit in the book, like just like I guess maybe like the hipsters or like the people from like the nicer side of Mexico City, like they'll try to embrace like their little cultural side, but they still kind of make it assimilated to like European style. Like I think I like the
Mm-hmm.
I like when he mentioned like somebody like from Polanco or whatever, like they'll buy like some fancy like chancla, but it's like, bro, why are you paying $100 for chanclas when you can just get that from like your local like I don't know, like cobbler, or I forgot the name for the people who make shoes, but you can just get them from them. Why are you paying for like a fancy chancla?
Oh yeah, and I would even say, like, I think he goes as far as like the assimilation aspect is la apariencia física, right? And you're looking for someone who's white to date, right? And so something about like la apariencia, right? If you're trying to
Mm-hmm.
assimilate, like you'll start dressing, for lack of a better word, like white, or
Mm-hmm.
dressing. I think now it's sort of, what's that TikTok trend where they're like, wealth.
Oh, like that old
Old
money,
money. There you go. There you go. There you go. I'm like,
like
wait, what
old
is it?
money style or
Yes,
whatever.
yes, right. Which I think now it's more trendy, but I would say back
Mm-hmm.
when we were in school, like, oh, you were dressing so white. Or
Mm-hmm.
people were so ashamed of wearing boots. Like, they're like, why are you wearing those
Yes.
botas? Why are you wearing a skin crocodile belt? And I'm like, because I want to. And now,
All of
because
a
of social
sudden.
media and everything, all of a sudden, right? It's like so trendy, and people are so happy, which really just shows how people in our community has progressed forward to not be shameful of those things,
Mm-hmm.
because now you even see the little güeritas or the niñas
Oh
fresas or
yeah.
whatever wearing botas too, because
Mm-hmm.
it's culturally relevant. There's nothing bad about it, but here we are, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we'll see maybe like a few years down the line to see if we're still interested in like cowboy and like botas.
Yeah, the botas, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but we'll see how I guess the fashion trend goes and see if we still embrace our botas or if we're just gonna go ahead and be like, ew, the botas really like go back to our.
Right. And here's the funny part, right? Because to me, being brown is so beautiful, and I think now we're in such a different place to embrace it and embrace our features. He does propose a question. It's like, ¿por qué
Mhm.
no aspiran a los rasgos culturales de la gente prieta? Right? And I think with assimilation, like, we're technically speaking Spanish. We're supposed to be speaking some indigenous language
Mhm.
that we don't know, but those indigenous individuals that still speak that language get made fun of. But technically, that's our origin. Like, that's where
Yeah.
we come from. And why wouldn't it be beautiful? I think I mentioned it earlier when I had a colleague that was like, oh my gosh, does my nose look big in that photo? And for a second, I had a moment of insecurity where I'm like, what's she talking about, my nose? And I'm like, hold on. I've grown such a long way to like love my nose, and there's nothing wrong with it. There's
Mhm.
nothing wrong with our lips, right? We don't have to get Botox. There's nothing wrong with, our skin, or how black our hair is.
Mhm.
There's so many different elements of like what La Gente Prieta bring to the table, and we can revert to wanting to look more ethnic or look more Mexican or being proud of being brown, but that hardly happens. I mean, I guess the
Yeah.
lips, because we've had big lips
Yeah.
for a hot minute, so I guess maybe.
Mhm. But yeah, no, yeah. Um, a lot of good, a lot of good things he kind of talked about, but
Yeah.
um, I think the most shocking thing was that he was talking about the Mexican Revolution heroes, and they were pretos like us, but in history whitened them. They
Yeah.
literally changed their appearance. I think who was it?
Benito
Miguel
Juarez.
Miguel
Hmm.
Hidalgo. Like that's not even how he looks. Like if you're lucky, you can find like an original, I guess, painting or picture of him. Because I use like
Well,
another white colleague
you know
as a
what's really funny?
reference.
No, what's really funny is the whole, yes, our anti, like our people who were big pillars in like our history were white. And but do you remember the story of La Virgencita to get the Mexicans, which I think that's also a Spaniard term for
Hmm.
people from Mexico, to get them to convert to Catholicism, they made the Morenita. So I guess that is the one aspects where they are trying to reach the Morenita Prieta, like, or the Virgencita Morena.
Hmm.
And that's the only one I recognize. And so that's really nice. But yeah, you're right. But I think you also see that even in the US, right? Where they try to
Hmm.
really whitewash people. And so
Oh yeah,
that's unfortunate.
yeah, yeah. That was a big shocking fact that actually hurt me because I think yeah he mentioned like some of them were like Prieto like us, and then somebody else was like Afro like Latino, and like they turn him into a white old man with like
Oh.
crazy white hair, and I'm like, dang, it
Hmm.
really will be sometimes your own kind that do
Oh,
things like
it
that.
really is. And I think he also brings up a good point because I think this chapter is also really combating the, oh no, in Mexico we're not racist or colorist, we're
Mm-hmm.
classist. And it's like, okay, well, when you see a brown person with an abundance of wealth that
Mm-hmm.
reaches your class, you still discriminate them based on their color. So
Mm-hmm.
I think it's true. I think brown people get discriminated regardless, especially in Mexico. You could be the richest person in Mexico and they're going
Mm-hmm.
to discriminate you because you're brown.
Yes, unfortunately, but I think that was mostly what the chapter
Mm-hmm.
covered. Really, just
Very
thank you.
short,
Very
but
short and
very
sweet.
rich.
Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm.
I will
1000%.
say, fun fact, the guy that he mentioned, Jose Vasconcelos, they have a really super cool library in Mexico City that I got lucky enough to visit, and it's like all over social media. They named that library after him.
Oh,
And,
wow. I didn't
and
know
I'm like,
that.
yeah. So after kind of reading this chapter, and then I'm like, oh, they named the library like after him? This guy who told us to like be more white. But he did I did like a quick Google search, but he did promote like a lot of like reading for like communities and build
Mhm.
libraries, which I'm like, okay, that's good, but he also didn't have the best thoughts, I guess.
Oh, oh yeah. You know what's so funny? You know what I was just watching? La India Maria. I was watching one of the movies. No, and I think growing up, you think, oh, this is a funny, película like Cantinflas.
Hmm.
Except this one is centered around La India Maria, who is in typical,
Hmm.
rural, but in this case, Indian or the countryside of Mexico. They dress
Hmm.
differently. They don't have modern customs, even dress wear. And like the judgment she was receiving, the treatment she was receiving, like, oh, she's just a campesera, like she doesn't know anything. She
Hmm.
would get passes for something, but then a lot of things are viewed as ignorant. And it was so funny reflecting on this book and reflecting on that chapter and really seeing how Mexico's entertainment industry also really perpetuated
Hmm.
this India ideology or just brown ideology or ignorance
Uh-huh.
in people from the countryside or people who look indigenous or brown. And it was so different. It's so different reflecting on this movie and how they're
Oh.
judging this character,
Hmm.
and it's not funny. I'll have to send you it so that you can
Yeah.
watch it.
No, I'm actually glad you mentioned that because I remember as a kid, like me and my parents, especially my dad, we enjoy watching it. We'll have like our good laugh. But yeah, like now that you
Hmm.
talk about it, it's like they really do, they're heavy on the stereotypes, and they really just trying to make it just like a comic relief. But in all reality, I think it's just hurting the image of all the indigenous people because just because they don't always, I know some of them don't know Spanish, that does, just because you don't know the language doesn't mean you're a dumb person or anything like that.
Right. No, it's so good. But I was really happy with this chapter. And I think so far the book is so interesting. And I'm really happy that we decided to read it. Chapter four is going to be a little longer. So I'm going to do my
Yes.
best to read and actually do it. But it
Yes.
was such a good read. This is going to be a short segment because it was a short
Hmm.
chapter. But Brenda, do you have anything else to add?
Um, No, nothing else except that honestly, so far it's been a really good book. Really, really good. I'm glad we picked it up.
All right, everyone, have a good one. Hope to
Bye.
enjoy.